Hello, beautiful soul, and welcome to another episode of Intuitive Creator Spotlight. I'm Stella, your host, and in this playlist, I am inviting amazing guests to share their stories and insights with us. My guests transformed their lives, and now they decided to help other people transform their lives too. So today, I have here with me Katy. She is a beautiful, beautiful soul who decided to embrace her own unique path, she embraced her magic, and now she helps others do the same. Hi, Katy. Welcome to this episode.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, Stella. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Same, same. I absolutely love your energy, and I can't wait to hear more about your story and also to share your story with our viewers too. So, I know that you have been through quite a journey when it comes to your career. You changed different jobs, you had different experiences, and I'd like to ask you, what do you think was, like at a soul level, the purpose of you going through so many different jobs? Why do you think that was important for your soul's path?
I truly believe the reason I've had such a colourful CV, as some people put it, is because all the things I have done in all of those different careers have taught me individual lessons, have helped me evolve. So, like for the people who don't know me, I started out as a veterinary nurse and I did that for many years. So, my main purpose through all my careers has always been like a helper role, supporting whether it's animals, people. There's always been this natural part of me, even from a young age, to be nurturing, supporting, and a healer, for want of a better word. So yeah, I started out as a veterinary nurse, which again, that taught me massive resiliency. Like when you're dealing as a nation, the Brits love their animals and we're very protective over them. And when you're dealing with situations that are very sad sometimes, animals that are sick. Like it taught me lots about resiliency. And then I have also been a personal assistant in $5 billion corporate in like companies over the years. And that taught me about like organization, business, logistic, like so many things, which then helped me come into my own business. And I've done so many different things. And I just believe I was meant to do those because I took snippets from all of them and they've helped me become who I'm meant to be. I don't think necessarily we're all meant to be here to do one thing. And which often I came up against things with that because, like I say, people have said I've had a colourful CV. I faced a lot of judgment with that because I think often, like as a child of the 80s, it's like, and as kids, it's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? As if we're going to ever be one thing. Whereas I believe you do things, you experiment. And I've always followed that nudge of when it felt like time to change or move on. I've done that, even if people's perception was, you're doing what now? Like I say, from veterinary nurse to a beauty and holistic therapist to a personal assistant to then having my own virtual assistant business to going into doing social media strategy to then actually coming back to my healing like roots and more of the magical, mystical realms and all of that. From the outside world, I can see why people might be like, interesting choices. But it's literally makes me so happy. And to me, it makes sense because all I've done is follow what felt right for me in those moments. So yeah,
Mm.
quite a
Yeah.
long-winded answer, sorry.
No, and I love that you mentioned all of this because in this playlist where I'm inviting all of my beautiful guests, it's we talk about this a lot about the creativity, and I love that you mentioned it here. You followed your own creative path in your own way, and eventually you chose to come back to who you are, to yourself. And before we started this episode, we spoke a bit about how we all go through seasons and how we all discover ourselves or discover parts of ourselves through those seasons. And it sounds like that's what your soul needed to go through those seasons to discover more about your own magic. So if you were to describe a bit about your own magic, how would you describe that?
Oh gosh, my own magic. Like I feel like I don't like use the word purpose because I truly believe purpose is to come here and be ourselves basically. Then when I think a lot of the time we talk about purpose and everyone's like my job or the role they're meant to be, I truly believe we're to come here and be the most truest version of ourselves is our purpose, because when we're in our true frequency or energy or whatever you want, like whatever you resonate with, that's where we then attract what we're meant to, the experiences we're meant to, and that's where we create our ripple effect out into the world, the cosmos, and the greater beyond, basically. So, my magic, I know for me, naturally, I am here to guide people. I have energy activations in my being that activate my people, like the people who I'm meant to be. I'm sure my tones, my frequency to some people make them want to run the other way, but because that's just naturally what happens, isn't it? But I'm here really to like empower people, help them release everything that they're not, because we get conditioned from the minute we're born. Like parents tell us things, schools, society, and life gets so distorted. So I see it as paint. We have layers and layers of paint put on top of us. And my magical, what I naturally do in my being is hold space for people and allow them to scrape all those layers of paint off so they can find themselves and then pick their own path and stuff. So it's like a mixture of things, I feel, is what I do. But basically, I just feel like I'm myself and then stuff happens.
I love that so much because then at the end of the day, when we allow ourselves to just be, it's the energy that you carry with you through all those different jobs and through all the different conversations that's what you're bringing. And I'm sure if you probably think about your careers in the past, talking about like describing your magic now, you always had it with you. It just took
Yeah.
probably time to actually say, okay, you know what, that's who I am and that's what I want to express more in the world. And so I know that you spoke about those moments when you felt like others around you perceived what you do or your energy as too much, and as a result, carrying that witch wound. How did you break free from that conditioning? What kind of action or steps did you take?
So I'm still on that journey. I am never going to say I am the finished product because as we said earlier, like nature and seasons, I think we're constantly evolving and we're meant to like because when we've stopped that process of changing, we're either stagnant and in stagnant things, death happens. So I feel like I'm still always going to be on that journey. For me, the witch queen massively impacted me through making myself smaller, like I say, ignoring things that I knew to be true for me and trying to be the good girl, all those things that come through with that. So for me, my process of like releasing that was one, coming out of the broom closet. Like I started my coming back to my spiritual journey in 2007. And back then still no one talked about stuff. So I really like was in the closet over like a lot of things. So it was the process of one just sharing stuff about myself with people who I could trust. That was like the beginning part of my journey, like just friends who I knew wouldn't judge me and was just like, cool, if that's what you're into. And you start to like then be like, oh, but then for me, it was really like going back to the energy healing practices, doing lots of like shadow work, integration poses. I blend lots of different modalities for myself. So it's not that one specific thing like worked. It's just, and again, seasonally, like there's certain things that I did for a long time that now I just kind of go, that doesn't feel like it works for me anymore, and that's okay. And so I feel like it's just mix and match, bit of a pick and mix of like I say, working through like I used access bars, I did Reiki healing, I do galactic healing and things that I've done for myself. Nature, for me, nature is like such a healer, just being around nature and the energy spirit. So and the elements, like so many things. I basically decided that this was going to be my business. And regardless of feeling uncomfortable and worried about judgment, I did it. And then that was part of the healing process. And then the next layer of stuff happened. So yeah.
Mm. This is a great inspiration, Katie, because I know that as intuitive creators, we have many beautiful intuitive creators in this community watching us here. It's not a straightforward path, right? Because you have to go through different experiences. Like you mentioned, you learn different modalities, different techniques. Even as a client, maybe you go and ask for help in different ways, depending on what you're going through. But then it, that decision of like, that's my path, and no matter what, I'm just going to continue to go on this journey. It is so life-changing because how I see this is like it's a declaration to the universe is, or just an affirmation, let's say, that's my decision, that's my path, and this is what I'm going to do. And it's like, okay, the universe says, okay, I hear you. So let's make things happen. But I know that on this beautiful journey that is not straightforward, but so magical, many people struggle with the need to receive external validation. Um, and that can be, in relationships, in a career, anything else that they experience in their life. How does someone go from, I'm so worried about what other people will think, to doing the work on themselves and then say, okay, I respect their opinion, but I'll still be me. Like, what does it take to go from this to that?
I think like the main thing is being first step open to being curious and experimental because like in all of these things, I think we often get that it's this way or that way. And again, everyone's frequency, everyone's energy is unique to them, and what lands in someone's field will not work for someone else. So I think the first thing on anything is be open to being curious and that you're not gonna like find one thing and it be the thing that does all the stuff. It's like, right, I'm open and curious to how I can explore this as my first step is just, can I be open to creating change for myself? Because if we're not open to it, we've already closed off our energy, our mind before we've even get started, which then makes it so much harder work to like be open to like I say, being this change. And then like it's small steps, like it's that compound effect with everything. Like one, we're usually seeking a validation outside of ourselves because of how it's an external, it's a mirror to how we truly feel about ourselves. And again, if we cannot be in judgment of how we feel about ourselves and really build, sorry, a connection with ourselves, appreciate ourselves without it being cliche, love ourselves and accept ourselves, you just naturally expand. And then again, when you have that greater connection with yourself, it just creates a more, it's not that everything becomes easy because there are always bumps in the road, but you can't help but like have certainty because you believe and you trust in yourself. So even on the hard days, you're just like, I'm just going to keep going because you have that deep inner knowing that something about this is right. So even though there's resistance, the mind is going, no, let's not do that. And all the things that the mind's going to do, it's just like you can find that peace or come back to that peace where you're then like, what is my truth? They're allowed their opinion, their point of view. I'm different to them. That's okay. And again, like whatever tools you use to find that, whether you're journaling, pulling cards, like so you can always just come back to yourself. Like I say, some days it's for me, I'll go and sit in nature where I can quiet my mind and like be like, oh, I feel like myself, my own energy. I can see that they're not my opinions, my points of view. Actually, is in this energy even in my field mine? No, let's get rid of it. And I'll use my ways of doing it. And some days you'll find me drumming because it's the drumming and the shifting the energy in that way that makes me come back to myself. But I think the key step for everyone to start with is like tune into yourself, find your truth without everyone else's projections, opinions, points of view. And that's hard because in a world where there's social media, there's TV, there's everyone's, it's like, find your voice, share your voice, be empowered to use your voice. And then sometimes you have to be like, I have to block out everyone else's voice to find my own voice. So I think like being comfortable, like I say, the small steps. So if you have to tune out social media, if you have to be like family, I can't see you for a little while because I need to like be comfortable to be myself and have those boundaries and just believe in yourself a little bit. Sorry, I've gone off on a tangent again.
This is a very important topic, and I was actually thinking about this and having conversations about how much media and AI is influencing our life as well. At some point, we will no longer tell like what is a real video and what is AI, because technology advances so much, but it's not about being against it, because that's the shift that everybody is going through. It's about embracing it and learning how to still keep our own essence and be our own essence while the world is advancing, because thousands of years ago people weren't having access to what we have now, and
Yeah.
thousands of years in the future it will be the same. So we just have to continue to adapt while remaining close to who who we are, our essence. And so this is a really important topic. So thank you so much for bringing that up. And yes, sometimes we might feel a bit uncomfortable to say to our family, hey, I need time, especially when you have children and or you have people who need your help or attention, and it's hard to just say, okay, I just need to go out for 5 minutes or just have a cup of coffee. I absolutely remember when my daughter was very small, I felt guilty
Mm.
just taking a cup of coffee for 5 minutes. I felt guilty doing that, and then I had to really work on myself. And hey, we all have our own needs, and we have to be respectful and find ways to give ourselves that. So this is a really important topic. So thank you so much for talking about it. I know you mentioned about going, through all of these different experiences in your career, and then eventually you chose to just like you decided this is going to be my business. Can you tell us what was that moment when you just knew there is no way back? Like, what was that key moment for you when you took that
Oh.
decision? What happened then?
It's funny because I guess it wasn't like some big moment. It was more, I couldn't really avoid it anymore. It was like, so I was at that time, this would have been back in 2019. Because I'd been self-employed back in 2007, and I'd done when I'd had my first Reiki attunements and all of those things. So I'd done this work back then, but I just, because of experiences and people not around me and I guess my witch wounds and worried about being persecuted back then, I kind of veered off my path for various reasons. And again, it was more that I couldn't avoid that back in, like I say, 2019, I was then working with people all about Instagram strategy. I had a travel account, I was doing all these different things and helping people lead generate and all of this, but everything kept coming back to guidance. Everything kept coming back to you can give them the tools and do the stuff, but it was how they felt about themselves. And everyone that the universe kept bringing to me just kept pushing me, then being into, you're going to do guidance work. They'd always be like, well, how can you help me more with that? We've got the Instagram bit, but I want help with it. And I was just like, okay, I see you and I hear you, universe. Like, and it was just about me accepting what was coming to me. I'd had the tools, I'd done this stuff before, and it was more just me being comfortable with going, okay, like I see you, I hear you. This is actually what comes very naturally to me. And it kind of being an acceptance of myself and what I can do for people was the turning point on it, really, more than it was some big revelation or like spirit came to me. It was just people, situations was just like, I can see where the train tracks are going, and I kind of just couldn't avoid it anymore. It was like this, and you can choose to ignore it, like you did back in 2007. But the resistance that created, and it made me sad. Like I went through a bout of like being depressed and all these things because I'd tried to avoid it for years, for through fears. I'll admit that. And then I kind of hit a rock bottom, and it was like, well, you either do this, and the minute I started embracing it, it was just lighter. Life felt good again. I felt more myself than I had done in years. And so it was just like, that's the sign, like how I felt while doing it, and then getting to help people, which is the thing that brings me a lot of joy. It just kind of came easily. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because, we might want to see always like physical evidence that okay, that's the thing I need to do. A job you apply to, somebody calling you to do some sort of work somewhere. But it is harder to actually come back to yourself and say, well, that's my path, and like nobody walked that path before, but I'm gonna do it. And then once you do it, it's just the feeling and the confirmation that you receive from the universe as well, because it's always happening, it doesn't it? You always receive that confirmation through different ways, but it's always there. So I know that you speak about freedom, that freedom is not outside of us, it is within. So I want to ask you, how does freedom feel like to you now, comparing to, let's say, the first years of your life?
So I guess the where I can reflect now is like, so in my 20s, I spent like, say, years backpacking. I was like, I like freedom, like I'm a Sagittarius rising, independence, all of these kind of things are very naturally innate in me that I like adventure, freedom. So to me, that was like, well, you go traveling. And obviously, while I'd be away traveling, I was like, oh, this is when I feel like I'm alive. This is like obviously why I love freedom, how I felt when I was doing all these adventures and having an amazing time. And I was like, this is what it is. But the reflection I have now is yes, don't get me wrong, traveling's awesome. I always still want to travel the world and see lots of different places, and I love that. However, it was about the feeling I got when I did it, and that wasn't about the places. It was at that time when I was home, I felt like I had to conform in a certain way. There were like, at this age, you should have a job, you should be saving for a mortgage, or you should have gone to university. I never followed the path of whether it was my family's expectations or society's. I kind of always just did it my way. And that wasn't even intentional. It was just, well, that doesn't feel good to me, so I don't want to do it. So I just did what I wanted, and not in a rebellious way, or I didn't think it was rebellious. Like, but some people deemed it as that, oh, she just does what she likes. And it was just like, well, isn't that the point of life? Whereas now I realized the reason I got that feeling while I was traveling is because I let myself be myself. It was how I allowed myself to be when I was traveling. Like, I didn't worry about what people I met thought of me. I was just like, I was completely myself. And the people that I'd meet in a hostel or wherever I was, just naturally, we got on and radiated towards me. And I was free because I embraced myself. And that's when I realized it wasn't about going away or what I was doing as a job. I could give myself to be permission to be free in an instant. And we can if we're in acceptance of ourselves and again being ourselves to that level. And it's not easy. I'm not going like, oh my God, just be yourself. It's hard. And I struggle with it some days where I'll catch myself in my head and suddenly I can feel myself contracting and I'll be like, oh, and then I'm like, well, does that create great with you? Is that who you want to be? Is that even you? And then I'm like, oh, I see where I've gone off like on a tangent for like a day, a week, a month, however long. And then that's when you can reset yourself. And I could be annoyed about the fact that I went off on a tangent and be in judgment, or I could just go, oh, do you remember that time you like went off on a loop, and just be compassionate and loving to myself and just be like, does it really matter in the grand scheme of things? No. And that's what's created freedom for myself more and more, rather than me sometimes like, God, if you'd spoken to me like I say 3 4 years ago, it's like, well, I have a house now, a mortgage, a husband, a dog, like commitments that mean I can't just like I used to. I'd be in a job and I'd go in on a Monday, hand my notice in, give them 3 weeks notice and be like, I'm going off for a year or two, see ya. And everyone would be like, what? But when you've got commitments, you can't do that. But I also don't need to do that now because I feel the freest I ever have done because I let myself be myself. And yes, like I say, I wobble sometimes, but most of the time, that's like where I found my little key to that.
Wow, that's such a beautiful perspective on freedom, and it just sounds like you found that space within yourself where you feel free no matter what, and at the same time you combine it with your pleasure of traveling and discovering new places because it's so fascinating. And I actually saw this somewhere. That it's really important to travel. I'm trying to remember the exact thing that I saw. That it's really important to travel because if you don't explore what's outside of your comfort zone, it's like you never read the next page in the book. And the universe is so beautiful, it's so vast, and it helps us. But I think it's about how society is telling us that freedom equals traveling more, or freedom equals fill in the blank, and then we kind of take it on. It's just something that you're not even aware, because you like we grow from children to teenagers and so on, and but this is what's happening a lot of the times. And I love that you created this beautiful world for yourself. You found that world and then you expanded from there, and then you're sharing it with all of us here too. So I know that as you had to overcome all of these things for yourself, and now you're helping other people, women in particular, to release what's holding them back. So in your experience, what would you say is the most common block that you see in women that they may want or try to release or dissolve?
I think a lot of it stems from like self-worth stuff, like ne not feeling necessarily worthy as they are and who they are. Like often they're trying to prove something. And again, there's this often benchmark. A lot of the women that come to me, they're often very successful women. They have all the things that you think of the tick list of the house, the family, the job, like everything that, and in the external world is what people are like, oh, they've made it. And yet within themselves, they're like, I don't feel fulfilled. I don't understand why that is. And it's again this thing of where they've had the projections, the expectations, which expectations create limitations because you're not listening to what you truly like, your soul self, your essence, whatever you sort of resonate with. And you've done it from that place of like, not necessarily fear, but what you've believed is right for you, but it creates a disconnect over time. And for some people, it's when they're younger, or some people, it's when they're older. They just feel not at home in themselves. So I think the biggest block is then being comfortable to go, there's nothing wrong with where I'm at. It's just now I want to change, and then getting over the fear of judgment of what other people would think. Often that then creates that thing which then ties into the self-worth. So it all sort of interweaves with a lot of that. But the biggest blocks are, like I say, the fear of what other people think and how that ties to self-worth, and then being comfortable enough to be like, it's okay for me to change and shift my perspective, the people around me, is again like tying it back to that thing of the seasons in their life and that things have just shifted and stuff. So yeah, judgment and expectations are probably often people's biggest resistance because it just creates such limitation for us.
Mm. And once they release that, would you say the space or the energy they step in feels like owning their magic again? Would you say this is what's happening, or how do you feel people are shifting once they go through these transformations?
I guess, yeah, like it varies from the people I've worked with. Some of them it is literally they have claimed their magic. They like own who they are, their voice, they've shifted their whole way of being, even their lifestyles. It's been so interesting to, and then for some people, it's just been like they've become content. They suddenly realized actually all the things outside them were great and that they didn't need to change any of that stuff. It was just how they felt about themselves. And then they just got to sink deeper into their current situations. So again, it's some people, like I say, it like unleashed a whole different version of them. And for other people, it was more of a deeper sinking into who they are and acceptance, so that then actually they saw the magic in the mundane. Because really that's what life's about. Like we're all just doing life, but we get so again distracted, don't we, chasing things rather than being like, oh, life is good. Like I love my life.
Mm.
Like when again you're like, I'm okay, I love who I am as a person, life's good. And again, it's not saying it's all sunshine and rainbows, because like again, I believe we're meant to have speed bumps in the road, because otherwise we get stagnant. Because if the nothing ever went wrong for any of us, like what would we do with our time? Like it would get boring, wouldn't it? As much as everyone's like, and that's a very privileged thing to say, but I do, but like I say, again, nature, if nature isn't growing, shedding its leaves and then decaying and breaking down, it just means it's dead. And it's the same for us as people. We need to constantly be in that evolution. And therefore we have to meet resistance or our shadows to force us into that next phase. So yeah,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yes, and I agree with you. We would get very bored if everything would be perfect. And in fact, what is perfection?
Exactly.
What we thought was perfect 10 years ago, is no longer that. So we have to continue to adapt and embrace, these changes and learn from everything that comes through as well. To everyone who's watching us, please remember to check out the description of this video to know how you can connect with Katy. She is a beautiful soul. She's an amazing psychic. She gives absolutely incredible guidance to all of her clients, and I would love for you to connect with her as you hear her story. I'm sure if you resonate with her story, you will want to check everything that she's doing, and feel free to just to send her a message, an email, in however way you can connect with her. Also, depending on when you're going to watch this video as well, and depending what she's going to work on at that point too. So, Katy, before we wrap up this episode, I want to ask you one last question. If you were to go back to your younger self, what advice or message would you share with the younger version of yourself?
It's funny because I was doing some work around this last week for myself, and I just tell her, like, be you, regardless of where you meet resistance, just keep going, be resilient, be yourself. Some people aren't going to like you, and you know what? That's okay. You'll come to terms with that, and the right people will come into your life and make you so happy. And yeah, just keep going. Like, that's all you can do. Just keep going, and you'll be okay. Like, yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. I love your positivity and I love just the energy that you're sharing with the world, Katie. And thank you so much for being my guest here today.
Having
Um, thank you, thank you. And thank you to everyone who's watching us. If you're new to our channel, please take a moment to subscribe, like this video, let us know your thoughts, and remember to check the description of this video to connect with Katie and myself. I'm sending you all loads of hugs. Take care and I'll see you again soon. Bye bye.